Tubers, two bats, and of course crazy people. Well, last month marked my 6th year living here in the Philippines. And I got to thinking, well, maybe I should do a 6-year review of living in the Philippines. And then I thought better of it. I figured if anybody's watched me for any length of time, oh, and a big shout out, by the way, for all the new subscribers. Welcome to the channel. I don't know why you subscribed, but thanks. I thought, you know what? Why rehash stuff that I've already done? If you, like, again, I don't want to repeat myself, but I will. It would just be me repeating the same old stuff. But one thing I don't think I've ever talked about here is my first 30 days, 6 years ago. What I did right, which was a lot of things, and some things that I didn't do quite right, which was 2 or 3 things. And I just thought I'd go ahead and on this quasi-anniversary, go ahead and share with you my first 30 days living here in sleepy little Dumaguete, Philippines. Here I come. Okie dokie. So as promised in this video, I'm going to talk about my first month, my first 30 days here in the Philippines. And I think I did most of the stuff right, but hindsight being 2020 and playing that game where if you could go back in time, what would you change? There's, I think, 2 major things that I would have changed if I could do just that, go back in time and make it different. I would be remiss if I didn't go over some stuff that I did prior to coming over here also, because I think it's really valuable information. I imagine, like you are right now, watched videos about guys here in the Philippines and what they were doing, and I gleaned as much information from them as possible. There were 3 or 4 players back in the day when I came out here. Now, everybody that's been here for more than 2 months and their girlfriend has a YouTube channel. So, I don't know how you guys keep up with everybody. But that being said, I watched these guys diligently, and I took their advice. And what they were recommending to do, I did, and I'm grateful that I took their advice. Number 1, I made sure that when I filed for my Social Security, and I know not all of you are going to be on Social Security, but you're going to have, I'm thinking, an income stream of some sort. Could be from a rental property, could be from a pension, an IRA, investments. It doesn't really matter. But I think it's really, really important that there be a constant, steady, reliable source of income. And the amount we're not even going to get into. So, but enough so that you know that you'll always have a roof over your head and food in your stomach. And after that's academic, right? So, when I filed for my Social Security, I actually kept working and saved up some more money because I was allowed to for 2 months. And I made sure that 2 checks hit my bank. And I knew in my heart of hearts, okay, there was no break in the system there. That's working. I then set up a money transfer service. I used Zoom. I know that there's all kinds of other companies out there. There's Wise and Remitly, and I forget the names of them all. That would be your due diligence to set up or investigate and decide which service is best for you. But you're going to want to be able to take the money from where it goes and be able to transfer it over so that it goes into your pocket and you can spend it over here. Savings account. I had a buffer amount of money set up. My number at the time was $8,000 in an emergency fund. And when I came over here, I had $6,000 in my pocket. One little quirk on that is I made sure, because I listened to videos, all of that money with the exception of some 20s and 10s that I broke at the airport, were crisp, brand new $100 bills, because that's all they will accept over here if you're going to change money. I called my credit card companies and my bank. I made sure that they knew I was going to travel, what dates, where I was going to be, and made sure that we were cool on that. I think you need to give them, could be 10 minutes notice, could be 48 hours. I don't know what the rules are these days. In addition to the $8,000 in the bank and $6,000 in my pocket, I had about $25,000 available on my credit cards. I zeroed out all of my debt prior to coming over here. There was nothing that I owed to nobody. It was just me and my phone bill, which brings me to an important point. I did something that was remarkably smart and didn't know it. I wanted to be able, when I got over here, I wanted to be able to stay in touch with my family. I have kids. I have my dad, my sister, friends. I wanted to be able to call them at any time. I had all their phone numbers down. I wasn't really clear on how the phone system over here worked and what SIM card to get and should I buy another phone. I didn't have that worked out. But what I did, I had T-Mobile at the time. And I contacted T-Mobile, told them what I was doing. I said, hey, I'm moving over to the Philippines. Is there a way that I can call this America, North America for you purists? Can I call my folks back in the States, or my kids back in the States, and get through? And they said, yeah, you have to buy what's called an international plan. And I remember the numbers. It was $50 a month for unlimited calls, text, data, blah, 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 with T-Mobile at the time. This is back in 2017. And it was another $15 to kick it into international. So that meant that once I was over here, I could call and boom, I had connection, no problem. Didn't need an internet or anything else. It just worked. That became a key element for me over here, and I didn't know why, but I'll get there in a minute. Okay, so when I came over here, I spent 24 bizarre hours in Cebu, and then I took a bus, and I had a backpack and a suitcase. And when I landed at the bus station, I got into a trike, because I knew that there were trikes here because I'd watched videos. And I said, take me to a hotel. He said, which one? I said, I don't know, you pick it. I didn't book it, I didn't plan it. I figured somewhere around here there's got to be a hotel. And what's the worst thing that can happen? I get in there and I don't like it. Well, I spend the night and I go somewhere else. I'm going to elaborate on that in just a second. So he took me to a place called the Tip Top. I checked in. I think it was 22 bucks a night, and it included a breakfast. So up to the room I went. I didn't really care for the room. I felt the room was too small and was configured wrong, but I was grateful to get home, or get here at least, take a shower, relax, grab a bite to eat, and hop in the sack and sleep off the plane ride. One thing I forgot to mention. When I got to the airport in Cebu, prior to coming to Dumaguete via bus, I changed a couple of $100 at the airport out of my $6,000. That, again, was a piece of advice that I got off of YouTube. Yeah, the rate sucked. It wasn't the best, but it's important to have the local currency in your pocket, because sure enough, the minute I left the airport, I took a taxi to a hotel in Cebu, and guess what I had to pay in? Pesos. They didn't even take credit cards. So I had those available. Same thing with the bus ride. Same thing with the hotel. Now, I'm at the hotel, and I'm there on night number 2, and for some reason, I am just hot to trot to find an apartment because I was trying to cut costs. I figured out in my head how much I was paying per day and how much that was going to cost me over a month's period of time to stay at the hotel, and that if I moved to this apartment that was across the street from me, that was available, I could cut my costs down almost in half. And that didn't turn out to be the case. When I moved into that apartment 2 days later, fools rush in, right? They told me it came with internet. Well, great. So when I moved in, I said, "Where's the internet?" They said, "Well, you got to go buy a router." You didn't tell me that. So it wasn't the $20 that I had to pay for the router, which is exactly what it was. It was a hassle factor having to go get it. There were no sheets or pillows or anything on the bed. That's my fault. I didn't check into it. I just kind of took a look around. I looked at the numbers. I said, okay, I'll take it. It didn't have a coffee maker. It didn't have an oven. It didn't have a stovetop. It had a hot plate, and that thing didn't even work. It had uncomfortable furniture. It had a horrible setup where light was coming in and just roasting me. And so, long story short, I spent 6 weeks at this apartment until I was able to find another place. Why do I tell you all that? I was speaking the other day to a gentleman that's been to over 67 countries. He's just got the money to do it, the time, the desire. It's his dream. And him and I had a really nice 2.5-hour conversation the other day. And he validated what I'm going to tell you. And that is this. If I had it to do all over again, I would have simply budgeted more money for my first 30, actually for my first 90 days than whatever I thought it was going to cost. I would add 50% to it and be right. But it wouldn't go over that. And what he validated with me was this. I said, you know what? If I could do this all over again, I didn't like my room at this hotel. There was no real reason for me to rush in and put down security deposits and all this money and pay outlandish air conditioning bills that was already included at the hotel. Breakfast was included at the hotel. All of a sudden, it's not sounding so expensive to me anymore because none of that was available at the apartment. Routers, internet, extra charge for this, charge for water, blah, 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 blah. And so the apartment was a bust. It was really about the same price, if not just a touch less, than the hotel. And if I could go back in time, I would have just budgeted to stay a full-on month, possibly more, in a hotel when I first came here. That would have done a number of things. Number one, I could have just moved hotels. I could have taken 3 or 4 hours. I didn't have any transportation, so I could have taken a trike, and I could have said, show me 3 or 4 hotels up and down this road. I wanted to stay near Robinson's because it was easy for me to kind of get a GPS in my head as to where I was at. It was a big landmark, made life simple for me. If I ever got lost, I could tell people Robinson's, and they could point me in the right direction. I could find my way home. So hindsight being 2020, I would have found a hotel that was a little more to my liking, possibly a little bit more money, and I would have negotiated with them for a longer term stay. And if they wouldn't negotiate with me for a longer term stay, I wouldn't stay there. And I venture to say that 9 out of 10 places, if I looked at 10, would have said, yeah, sure, let me talk to the manager. This is what it would be for a night. This is what it would be for a week. This is what it would be for 2 weeks. This is what it would be for a month. And I would have actually come out ahead. It would have been an opportunity to take a lot of pressure off. I wouldn't have to worry about sheets and pillows, at least not at first. I wouldn't have to worry about running around and buying toothpaste and soap and all that kind of stuff. That's all supplied by the hotel. I wouldn't have to worry about where I was going to get a bite to eat first thing in the morning because that was supplied at the hotel. And it would give me a chance to just kind of decompress and acclimate and adjust to my new environment. Let's face it, boys and girls, we're, in a new weather system out here. It's hot. At least when I got here, it was hot. There's traffic that you're not used to, or I wasn't used to. There's money that I was still trying to wrap my head around and figure out what was what, and was I paying the right price, and was this expensive or was that expensive? And so I would have just chilled it. The second thing that I did was I rented motorbikes. And I rented motorbikes, I rented used motorbikes. I think at the time they were only about $3,000 a month. But the first time I went out, I rented them by the day, paid full retail plus 10%, and got not ripped off, but that was the going rate. But again, I would have just negotiated a month-long contract for a scooter. And that took me a week to do. I used public transportation till I got the courage to drive a scooter here in traffic. Hindsight being even more clear, I would have just rented different scooters every couple of days. A 125, a 110, a 150 this, or whatever that, Yamaha, Honda, Kimco, you name it. I would have figured out which one really suited me, which one worked the best. Do I want a motorcycle type? Do I want more of a scooter type with a hook and a floorboard? Those are things that I can't answer for you because it's all personal taste. But I would have inked up and bought the bike. You're going to use it anyway. The rental fees that I was paying were just going to somebody else's pocket and making either his payment or just pure profit. And so maybe take some time and take some test drives, but knowing that I'm going to live here, knowing that this was going to be home, it would have made much more sense if I'd have just pulled the trigger after figuring out, okay, I like a Click 125, or I like a whatever, a Honda Beat, or, pick your poison, whichever one suits you, and just pay cash for it. Because remember, I got $6,000 in my pocket, I got $8,000 in the bank, and I've got 25 grand on credit cards. So I could have done that, boom, gotten that over with. Now, having my own bike and staying at the hotel would have afforded me the opportunity to what I eventually ended up doing. And that was just driving every day. Sometimes I'd drive for an hour, hour and a half, and I would get tired, or I would get lost, or I would just be too hot, or I just didn't feel like driving anymore. And I explored. Other days I'd be out for 3, 4, 5 hours. And I finally figured by watching videos that Valencia was a nice place to go. Rike had a channel, Life Beyond the Sea, still has it. I was watching that faithfully. He did a video about Valencia. I said, I got to go find this Valencia place. And after a little trial and error, I found it. And I said, I like it up here. And I must have written down 10 phone numbers of places for rent. No one ever returned my call. So every day I would go home in defeat. Didn't even get to see the place. But then one magical day, I drove up the same street, going up to the same place, good old Valencia. What do you know? There was this great big sign up on this really cool modern looking apartment complex, or building rather, that said for rent. I pulled over. I called the number right then and there. A woman answered the phone right then and there, spoke perfect English. We agreed to meet the next day. She told me the price. She told me what it would take. I went down to the bank, changed over some money that would accommodate in the event that I was going to take the place. First and last was all that she was requiring. Went in, took a look at it, and what do you know? I fell in love with it. And I think it was a week later I was allowed to move in because somebody else had to move out. So, and I lived there for 2 years. So, had I of just stayed in the hotel and let myself decompress, get acclimated, not take on too much, and then buy the bike that really suited me. I own it free and clear. Budget's still working. Then find the place. The place was furnished, ready to rock and roll, and that was what I would have changed. Let's get back to that T-Mobile, and then I'll wrap this thing up. I was remiss. I did not mention that on day 3 or day 4, I said to myself, let's go ahead and transfer over some money. We got plenty in our pocket. We got enough in the bank in case there's an emergency. And of course, the credit cards. But let's just see if it works. Because what if I start to get low on money and I wait a month or 2 months and something goes wrong? What happens? Well, I hit old Zoom and I remember the amount, $800. I don't know why I picked that amount, but I said, I'm going to move over $800. I moved over the $800. And what happened? Screen came up and they said, this is your first transaction. We see your IP address. For your protection, we're going to ask you some security questions. So I gave them my favorite pet's name and my dad's middle name and what high school I went to. And they said, great, now we're going to send you a text. And they had my phone number from America. Remember the international plan? And sure enough, here came the text. And I popped in the 4 of the 5-digit code. And after I did that, they said, boom, here's your number, here's the amount, you're approved, take it to wherever places they listed, Cebuana, Mueller, BDO, and go get your money. Show them this number, fill out their form, and go get your cash. And that day, it's exactly what I did. Took me a while to figure out how to fill out the form. Took me a while to figure out where everybody was. It was a debacle to some degree, but it was part of the learning curve. So I got the money. I want to emphasize this phone business because I've talked to not one, not two, but 3 guys, to the best of my recollection, that got over here and deactivated their phone, went to move the money with whatever company they're using, and they tried to send them a text. They couldn't return the text or put in the code because they didn't have the number. And I think it was 15 emails and borrowing money from people to tide them over for a while and on the phones, and I don't know what they ended up doing, but finally they fixed it. But it was like brain damage times 10 to get that squared away. And it was just dumb luck because I wanted to stay in touch with my family and friends. It had never occurred to me that these companies were going to send me a text to validate and verify who I was for security purposes. That's the first 30 days. I've witnessed a number of guys come over here and have done just what I've done. They got here, they were antsy to go ahead and get an apartment. They raced into one just like I did and found out that it was just not their cup of tea. And the worst part of it is some of them signed long-ass leases for like a year and put down a first, a last, and then another deposit. So they were out good money, getting bad apartments, and no real way out. I was blessed. My landlord only wanted first and last. That was the end of it. Did I have issues with the apartment? Of course I did. I lived there for 2 years. Internet sucked. Sometimes the water didn't work. This would go out, that would go out. It had its issues, but none of them were deal breakers. And that's just kind of it. The whole phone thing, once you get past it all, you don't need to keep it. I don't need to keep paying $65. Now it's probably $165. I don't know. With inflation and phone rates and all that kind of stuff, I got no clue. But my friendly advice is to go ahead and keep a landline type of number, cell number. Yes, I know. I have Magic Jack. Yes, I have Google. Yes, I have Viber. I have all those things on my phone. But some places don't accept them. First time I got Magic Jack, I had a Las Vegas phone number. I said, let's call Social Security. I didn't even need to talk to him. I just said, let's call Social Security so I could just see how long a wait it is. And just out of curiosity. When Social Security rang, it says, we do not accept phones that are internet-based. So I was back to square one on that. So if anything else, food for thought. Okay, I hope everything is cool and groovy with you guys. If you're coming over here, one quick other little tidbit. If you're a big boy or a big girl, bring a lot of clothes, because when I got here, I was pushing almost 200 pounds. Right now, I'm at about 158. I can go into any store here in town and buy clothes. I came with a backpack and one suitcase. One other thing that I would have changed, I would have come with a backpack and 2 suitcases. I would have just paid the freight. If I was a 38 waist, a 42 waist, a quadruple X shirt, whatever. That was a problem for me. I could not find shirts, I could not find shorts, I couldn't even find underwear. Now, since the weight has dissipated, that's no longer an issue. That's just a little friendly tidbit from the old dog. All right, kiddos, I hope everything is cool with you. I will see you in the next video.